I'm Carrie Thompson, 62 years old. I never imagined my own daughter-in-law would physically attack me, leaving me with bruised ribs and a sprained wrist. But what hurt more than my injuries was seeing my only son Nathan stand by silently as I sobbed in pain. When I tried to call him the next day, his response was a text that simply read, "Stay away." In that moment, my world collapsed. But it also forced me to make a decision that would change all our lives forever. I'd love to know where you're watching from today. If you've ever had to make a difficult choice to protect yourself from family, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories of survival and healing. The day Nathan was born was the happiest day of my life. I still remember holding his tiny body against my chest, feeling his heartbeat alongside mine, making silent promises about the kind of mother I would be. What I couldn't have known then was how those promises would be tested 30 years later. I raised Nathan largely on my own after his father Richard died serving in the military when Nathan was only 4 years old. The early years were a blur of grief and determination. By day, I worked as a registered nurse at Memorial Hospital, and by night, I was both mother and father to a little boy who kept asking when Daddy was coming home. We developed routines that anchored us. Tuesday nights were taco nights. Saturday mornings were for pancakes, shaped like whatever Nathan was obsessed with that month. Dinosaurs, rockets, baseball mitts. We had a tradition of adding a special ornament to our Christmas tree each year to mark something significant that had happened. The year Nathan lost his first tooth, we added a tiny tooth fairy. The year he made the varsity baseball team as a freshman, we hung a miniature silver bat. Working as a nurse while raising a child alone wasn't easy. There were nights I'd come home exhausted after a 12-hour shift, barely able to keep my eyes open as I helped with homework or tossed a baseball in the backyard. But I never let Nathan see me falter. On my days off, I was at every baseball game, every science fair, every parent-teacher conference. I wanted him to know that despite having lost his father, he was never, ever alone. Nathan thrived despite our challenges. He was a straight-A student with a natural talent for mathematics and science. By high school, he was captain of the baseball team and president of the science club. I remember watching him at his high school graduation, delivering the valedictorian speech, my chest so full of pride I could barely breathe. He had overcome the absence of his father and exceeded every expectation. College took him 300 miles away to Stanford on a partial academic scholarship. I picked up extra shifts to help with the remaining tuition. We spoke nearly every day during his freshman year, and while the calls became less frequent as he adjusted to college life, we maintained a Sunday evening phone ritual that lasted throughout his undergraduate years. Nathan went straight from his bachelor's degree in computer science to a master's program. It was during his final year of graduate school that he met Meredith. I remember the change in his voice the first time he mentioned her name. There was an excitement there, a breathlessness I hadn't heard before. "She's brilliant, Mom," he told me over the phone. "She has an MBA and works in marketing for a tech company. You should see how she commands attention when she walks into a room." I met Meredith 3 months later when they came to visit over Thanksgiving break. She was undeniably striking, tall with sleek dark hair, impeccable clothes, and a confidence that bordered on intimidation. She was polished in a way I had never been with designer clothing and perfect makeup, even at breakfast. "Nathan speaks so highly of you," she said, embracing me when they arrived. "I can see where he gets his compassion." I was flattered, but something about her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Throughout the weekend, I noticed small things that gave me pause. The way she would subtly correct Nathan's table manners, how she answered questions directed at him about their future plans, the dismissive tone she used when discussing my career in nursing, calling it such important work, while clearly implying it was beneath her. I also noticed how Nathan deferred to her on almost everything: what time they should leave for dinner, whether they should accept my neighbor's invitation for coffee, what movie we would watch together. The confident, independent son I had raised seemed to fold himself into smaller spaces in her presence. But there were good moments, too. Meredith was undeniably intelligent and could be charming when she chose to be. She brought expensive wine and asked thoughtful questions about my nursing career. When Nathan spoke about his job prospects after graduation, she seemed genuinely supportive and proud. "I have some concerns," I confided to my sister Linda after they left. "She seems to control him in ways that make me uncomfortable." He's a grown man, Linda reminded me. He has to make his own choices, and first impressions can be misleading. I took her advice to heart. Perhaps I was being overprotective, seeing problems where there were none. When Nathan called 6 months later to announce their engagement, I pushed my reservations aside and focused on his happiness. "If you're happy, I'm happy," I told him, and I meant it. Or at least I wanted to mean it. The engagement was brief, only 4 months. Meredith wanted a spring wedding, and she was determined to make it happen. I offered to help with planning and visioning the mother-son moments I had always imagined would be part of this milestone. "That's so sweet," Meredith said when I offered, "but I've actually hired a wedding planner. It's all under control." That set the tone for the entire wedding process. Each time I reached out to participate, to go dress shopping, to discuss the menu, to help with invitations, I was politely but firmly shut down. "You've raised him for 28 years, Meredith said when I expressed disappointment about not being included in the cake tasting. "It's my turn now." Her words sent a chill through me, but I smiled and nodded. This wasn't about me, I reminded myself. This was about Nathan's happiness. The wedding itself was lavish and impeccably executed, just like Meredith herself. But it felt more like a corporate event than a celebration of love. I was seated at a table far from the main wedding party, with distant relatives I barely knew. When it came time for the mother-son dance, Meredith announced a change to the program. They were skipping it to move straight to the cutting of the cake. Nathan sought me out briefly during the reception. "Are you having a good time, Mom?" he asked, glancing over his shoulder as if afraid of being caught talking to me for too long. "It's beautiful," I assured him. "You look so happy." His smile seemed forced. "I am. Meredith has thought of everything." Before I could respond, Meredith appeared at his side, her hand gripping his arm. "The photographer needs us for more pictures, darling." She nodded at me without making eye contact. "Excuse us, Carrie." "Not Mom, not even Mrs. Thompson. Just Carrie, like an acquaintance rather than family." I told myself things would improve after the wedding, that once the stress of planning was behind them, Meredith would relax and our relationship would develop naturally. I was determined to be the kind of mother-in-law I had always wished for, supportive, not intrusive, available, but not demanding. But as the months passed, Nathan's calls became less frequent. Our Sunday tradition fell away entirely. When I called him, he often seemed rushed, speaking in lowered tones, as if he didn't want to be overheard. Invitations for dinner were met with excuses or last-minute cancellations. The first Thanksgiving after their wedding, I prepared all of Nathan's favorites, expecting them to join me as we had discussed. The night before, he called to say they would be spending the holiday with Meredith's family instead. "Her parents are expecting us," he explained, sounding apologetic but firm. "Maybe we can do Christmas with you." But Christmas came and went with the same outcome. I spent both holidays alone looking at old photographs and trying to understand what had changed. The ornaments we had collected throughout his life remained in their box that year. I couldn't bear to hang them alone. When I did see Nathan over the following months, the changes in him were alarming. He had lost weight, dark circles shadowed his eyes, and the easy confidence he had always carried was replaced by a watchful anxiety. He checked his phone constantly, responding immediately to Meredith's texts with what looked like fear rather than attentiveness. During a rare lunch together, Meredith was out of town on business, I finally voiced my concerns. "Nathan, honey, are you doing okay? You seem different." His defenses rose immediately. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing bad," I assured him. "I just worry about you. We hardly talk anymore, and when we do, you seem stressed." "I'm fine," he said tersely. "Work is demanding, and Meredith and I are busy building our life together. It's normal for things to change after marriage." "Of course," I agreed. "But healthy change shouldn't mean cutting off family who love you." His face hardened in a way I had never seen before. "Meredith says you're having trouble letting go, that you want to control my life because yours is empty." The words struck like physical blows. "Is that what you think?" "I don't know what to think anymore," he said, throwing cash on the table for his barely touched meal. "I need to go." As he walked away, I sat stunned, wondering who this person was and what had happened to my son. Almost 2 years into Nathan and Meredith's marriage, my phone rang late on a Tuesday night. I was already in bed, nearly asleep, when Nathan's name appeared on my screen. I answered immediately, my heart racing. He never called this late. "Mom," his voice was strained, almost unrecognizable. "I need to ask you something." "Anything, honey? What's wrong?" There was a long pause filled with what sounded like a struggle for composure. "Would it be possible to borrow some money, just temporarily?" In all his adult life, Nathan had never asked me for financial help. He had always been fiercely independent, working part-time jobs throughout college, even with the scholarship and my assistance. "Of course," I said without hesitation. "How much do you need?" The figure he named, $20,000, took my breath away. It wasn't that I didn't have it. My modest lifestyle and careful saving had left me with a decent retirement fund. But it was the amount itself that alarmed me. "Nathan, what's going on? Are you in some kind of trouble?" He broke down, then his voice cracking as he explained. Meredith had been hiding serious financial problems from him. Credit card debt mostly from her shopping habits, but also from investments she had made without consulting him. Their joint accounts were nearly depleted, and they were 3 months behind on their mortgage. "She said it was under control," he explained. "She handles all our finances. I trusted her." I arranged to meet him for coffee the next day, bringing the checkbook for my emergency savings account. When he arrived, I almost didn't recognize him. The weight loss I had noticed before had progressed to the point of gauntness. His hands shook slightly as he accepted the check. "This is a loan," he insisted. "I'll pay back every penny." "I know you will," I assured him. "But Nathan, I think you and Meredith might benefit from some financial counseling. This kind of debt doesn't happen overnight." His expression immediately closed off. "We'll handle it our way. Meredith already has a plan." "Does this plan include addressing the underlying issues? Because from what you've told me, this sounds like compulsive spending, maybe even financial infidelity." "Don't use those words," he snapped. "You don't know her. You've never tried to understand her." "I've tried, Nathan. She's made it very difficult." "See, this is exactly why she says I shouldn't involve you in our problems. You always think you know better." I bit back my frustration. "I don't claim to know better. I just care about your well-being." "I need to go," he said abruptly, pocketing the check. "Meredith's expecting me." As I watched him leave, hunched and hurried, I felt a deepening sense of dread. Something was very wrong in my son's marriage, and I was increasingly powerless to help him see it. 3 months later, Nathan called with unexpected news: Meredith was pregnant. Despite my concerns about their relationship, I couldn't help but feel a surge of joy. A grandchild, something I had dreamed of but tried not to pressure Nathan about. "That's wonderful news," I said sincerely. "How is Meredith feeling?" "She has pretty bad morning sickness, but the doctor says everything looks good. We had the first ultrasound yesterday." The mention of the ultrasound stung slightly, another milestone I hadn't been included in, but I pushed the feeling aside. "I'd love to help in any way I can. Maybe I could bring over some meals for your freezer, or help get the nursery ready." Nathan hesitated. "I'll ask Meredith and let you know." He never did let me know. Instead, I learned through social media that they were having a boy. Meredith had posted elaborately staged pregnancy photos with the caption, "Our little prince arrives in 4 months, so blessed to be starting our perfect little family." Our family. Not expanding their family, but starting it, as if Nathan had no family before Meredith. Despite the implied exclusion, I reached out again, sending a package of thoughtfully selected baby items: soft blankets, classic children's books, a silver rattle similar to one Nathan had loved. The package was returned to my doorstep a week later with no note. When I called Nathan to ask why he sounded uncomfortable, "Meredith has very specific ideas about the baby's things. She's created a registry if you want to select something from that." The registry, when I viewed it, contained only high-end designer items in a strictly monochromatic color scheme. Nothing personal, nothing that couldn't have come from a luxury catalog. I selected the least impersonal item, a white noise machine, and had it delivered with a note expressing my love and excitement. Meredith sent a formal thank you card, the kind you might send to a distant colleague, signed only with her name. As her pregnancy progressed, I noticed an escalation in what could only be described as hostility. When I commented congratulations on her baby shower photos, another event I wasn't invited to, she deleted my comment. When I ran into them at a restaurant and asked if I could briefly feel the baby kick, she claimed he was sleeping and it wasn't a good time. Then came the housewarming party. Nathan and Meredith had purchased a new, larger home to accommodate their growing family. Against my better judgment, I was hopeful when I received an invitation. Perhaps this was an olive branch, a chance to establish a better relationship before my grandson arrived. The house was impressive, a sprawling, newly built colonial in an exclusive neighborhood, the kind of home that made me wonder anew about their financial situation, especially given the crisis just months earlier. The party was equally lavish, catered with gourmet food, and attended by at least 50 people, most of whom seemed to be Meredith's colleagues and friends. Nathan greeted me with a quick, awkward hug. "Thanks for coming, Mom. Meredith's in the kitchen if you want to say hello." I made my way through the crowded living room, admiring the expensive furnishings and artwork. The house was beautiful, but felt more like a showroom than a home. There were no personal photographs, no evidence of Nathan's interests or history. As I approached the kitchen, I heard Meredith's voice pitched slightly higher than normal, as if performing for an audience. "And then his mother sent baby clothes from Target," she was saying to titters from several women gathered around her. I mean, I appreciate the thought, but did she really think I'd dress my son in mass-produced polyester? I froze just out of sight, my face burning with humiliation. "And the books," Meredith continued, "classic children's stories with actual paper pages. In this day of iPads and digital content, who wants dusty old books collecting germs around a newborn?" The women laughed again, and one asked, "Is she here today?" "Yes," Meredith sighed dramatically. Nathan insisted. "She's probably wandering around judging everything and planning how to insert herself into our lives once the baby comes. She's one of those smothering types who thinks becoming a grandmother gives her special rights." I had heard enough. I stepped into the kitchen, my hands shaking, but my voice steady. "Hello, Meredith. The house is lovely." The women fell silent, exchanging glances. Meredith's expression flickered briefly with something that might have been shame before hardening into a tight smile. "Carrie, I was just telling my friends how you've been so excited about the baby." "I heard what you were telling them," I said quietly, "and I think we need to clear the air. Could we speak privately for a moment?" Meredith glanced at her friends, who took the cue to excuse themselves, leaving us alone in the large, immaculate kitchen. "I don't appreciate being mocked." I began, keeping my voice low and calm. "Especially not in front of your friends. I was just having a little fun." She dismissed one hand resting on her rounded stomach. "You're being oversensitive." "No, I'm not. You've been systematically excluding me from your and Nathan's life, and now from my future grandchild's life. I've tried to respect your boundaries, but your behavior has gone beyond boundaries into cruelty." Her expression changed, then the social mask dropping completely. "Let's get something straight," she said, her voice cold. "Nathan is my husband. This baby is my son. You had your chance to be a mother, and now it's my turn. I don't want or need your opinions, your Target clothes, or your constant presence." "Nathan is still my son," I said, my own anger rising to meet hers. "Nothing will ever change that. And that child you're carrying is my grandchild. I have every right to be part of his life." "You have no rights," she hissed, stepping closer. "None. Nathan and I decide who is part of our son's life, and right now you're making a very poor case for yourself. By what? Calling out your rude behavior, your manipulation of my son, the way you've isolated him from everyone who cares about him." Her face contorted with rage. "You know nothing about our relationship. Nathan finally has someone who sees his potential instead of treating him like a child. Someone who pushes him to be better instead of coddling him. Someone who loves him for who he can be, not for who you tried to make him. That's not love," I said firmly. "Love doesn't isolate. Love doesn't demean. Love doesn't create fear." "Get out of my house," she snarled, moving even closer until she was just inches from my face. "I'll leave when I've said goodbye to my son." What happened next occurred so quickly I barely had time to react. Meredith's hands shot out, shoving me backward with surprising force. I stumbled against the granite countertop, the edge catching my ribs painfully. Before I could regain my balance, she slapped me hard across the face, the impact snapping my head to the side. Shocked and disoriented, I lost my footing and fell heavily to the tile floor, instinctively throwing out my hands to break my fall. Pain shot through my wrist as it twisted beneath me. I cried out more from surprise and shock than pain, though that was quickly following. "Mom," Nathan's voice came from the doorway. "What's going on?" I looked up through tears to see my son standing there, his face a mask of confusion. Meredith was already moving toward him, her expression transformed into one of fear and distress. "Nathan, thank God you're here," she sobbed, clutching at his arm. "Your mother just went crazy. She said horrible things about our baby, that we weren't fit parents. When I asked her to stop, she tried to push me. I was just defending myself and the baby." I stared in disbelief, still sprawled on the floor, my wrist throbbing and my cheek burning. "That's not what happened," I gasped. "Nathan, she attacked me." His eyes moved from Meredith to me, then back again. I waited for him to help me up, to question Meredith's outrageous lie, to show some sign that he knew his mother would never behave as she described. Instead, he put his arm around his wife's shoulders. "I think you should leave, Mom," he said, his voice flat and distant. "Nathan," I pleaded, struggling to stand, cradling my injured wrist. You can't believe this. You know me." "I know you've been having a hard time accepting my marriage," he said woodenly. "And now with the baby coming, maybe you're more stressed than you realize." Tears streamed down my face from pain and from the crushing weight of this betrayal. "She pushed me, Nathan. She hit me. Look at my face." "Just go," he said, turning away. "Please just go before this gets worse." Somehow I gathered myself enough to walk out of that house past the staring guests and to my car. I don't remember the drive home. I only remember sitting in my driveway, shaking uncontrollably, wondering how my life had shattered so completely in the span of 10 minutes. I barely slept that night. Every position seemed to aggravate my injuries. My ribs ached sharply with each breath, and my wrist had swollen to nearly twice its normal size. The side of my face where Meredith had slapped me was tender and starting to bruise, but the physical pain paled in comparison to the emotional devastation. My son, my only child, whom I had raised alone and loved fiercely, had chosen to believe the worst of me. He had watched me struggle to my feet, visibly injured, and turned away. By morning, the pain in my wrist had become unbearable. I called my friend and fellow nurse Maria, who came immediately to drive me to the emergency room. The moment she saw me, her professional assessment kicked in. "Carrie, what happened to you?" she demanded, gently examining my wrist and the bruise blooming on my cheekbone. I said automatically, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. Maria's eyes narrowed. In my 20 years as an ER nurse, I've heard that explanation from too many women with injuries like yours. Try again. In the car, the truth spilled out. Meredith's hostility, the confrontation, the physical assault, and worst of all, Nathan's reaction. "You need to report this," Maria said firmly as we waited for my x-rays. "What she did is assault. It's a crime." "I can't," I whispered. "She's pregnant with my grandchild. And Nathan, it would destroy any chance of reconciliation." "Carrie, listen to me. Documenting what happened doesn't mean you have to press charges right now. But you need a record of this incident, especially if there's a pattern of behavior." The diagnosis confirmed what we suspected: a sprained wrist, bruised ribs, and facial contusions consistent with being slapped. The attending physician asked pointed questions about how I sustained these injuries, his expression skeptical when I claimed to have fallen. "These injuries are consistent with an assault," he said quietly. "If someone hurt you, we can connect you with resources to help." I stuck to my story, ignoring Maria's disapproving look. I wasn't ready to make an official report. Not yet. Not while I still hoped Nathan might come to his senses. After returning home with my wrist in a brace and my ribs tightly wrapped, I tried calling Nathan. The call went straight to voicemail. I sent a text asking him to please call me so we could talk about what had really happened. No response. I tried again the next morning and the next. Nothing. 3 days after the incident, my phone pinged with a text message from Nathan. My heart leapt, then plummeted as I read the 2 words on my screen: "Stay away." Just that. No inquiry about my injuries. No explanation. No opportunity for discussion. 2 words that severed 30 years of love and sacrifice. I collapsed onto my couch, a guttural sob tearing from my chest, despite the pain it caused my ribs. This was worse than anything I could have imagined. Worse even than losing Richard all those years ago, because this was a choice. My son was choosing to believe a lie, choosing to cut me out of his life. Maria came by that evening with groceries and found me still on the couch, staring blankly at the wall, my phone clutched in my hand. "He texted me to stay away," I told her, my voice hollow. "My own son." Maria sat beside me, wrapping an arm gently around my shoulders. "I'm so sorry, Carrie, but this isn't about you. This is about Meredith's control over him." "What am I supposed to do now?" I asked. "I can't just give up on him." "No, you can't," she agreed. "But you also can't help him if you're being abused too. You need to protect yourself first." My sister Linda arrived the next day, having caught the first flight available after Maria called her. Linda had always been the practical one, the problem solver. She took one look at my injuries and went straight into action mode. "You're filing a police report," she announced. "Today, and we're getting a restraining order against that woman." "I can't," I protested weakly. "She's carrying my grandchild, and Nathan would never forgive me." "Nathan is a grown man making terrible choices right now," Linda said firmly, "and that baby deserves a grandmother who stood up against abuse, not one who enabled it by staying silent." I knew she was right on some level, but I couldn't bring myself to take such a dramatic step. Not yet. What if it pushed Nathan even further away? What if it provoked Meredith to restrict access to my grandchild permanently? "I need time," I told Linda. "Time to think, to process everything." Linda reluctantly agreed, but insisted on documenting my injuries thoroughly. Photographs from multiple angles detailed notes about exactly what had happened and copies of my medical records. "Just in case you change your mind," she said. I took a medical leave from the hospital claiming I had fallen and needed time to recover. My supervisor gave me 3 weeks, and I spent most of that time alternating between crushing grief and paralyzing indecision. What had happened to the confident, decisive woman who had navigated single-parenthood career challenges and countless personal crises? Why was I now so afraid to act? The answer, of course, was fear. Fear of losing Nathan completely. Fear of never meeting my grandson. Fear of admitting that the son I had raised could choose a woman who would assault his mother and then lie about it. But as the days passed and the physical pain began to fade, another emotion slowly emerged through the fog of grief: anger. Not just at Meredith, though certainly at her, but also at Nathan for his betrayal, and at myself for allowing fear to silence me. It was this anger that finally propelled me to action. 2 weeks after the assault, I made an appointment with Dr. Reynolds, a therapist Maria recommended, who specialized in family trauma. In her calm, sunlit office, I poured out the whole story: the gradual isolation, the financial manipulation, the assault, the aftermath. "What you're describing," Dr. Reynolds said gently, "has elements of both domestic violence and family estrangement. Your son appears to be in a controlling, possibly abusive relationship, and you've become collateral damage. So what do I do? First, you focus on your own healing and safety. Then we create appropriate boundaries while leaving the door open for reconciliation if Nathan is ready." Over the following weeks, Dr. Reynolds helped me understand that I wasn't abandoning Nathan by protecting myself, that documenting the assault wasn't an act of vengeance but of self-preservation, that loving my son didn't mean accepting abuse from his wife. With this new perspective, I began researching domestic violence and controlling relationships. The patterns I read about matched so precisely with what I had observed in Nathan and Meredith's relationship that it took my breath away. The isolation from family and friends, the financial control, the emotional manipulation, the rewriting of reality. I joined an online support group for family members estranged due to a loved one's controlling relationship. The stories I read there were heartbreakingly similar to my own. Parents who hadn't seen their children in years. Siblings cut off without explanation. Grandparents denied access to grandchildren. But also stories of reconciliation of adult children who eventually recognized the manipulation and found their way back to their families. These stories gave me hope, but they also reinforced the gravity of my situation. This wasn't a simple misunderstanding that would resolve itself with time. This was a pattern of control and abuse that was unlikely to change without intervention. My resolve strengthened further when Nathan's childhood friend Taylor reached out after hearing rumors about what had happened. "I've been worried about Nathan for a long time," Taylor confided over coffee. "He stopped responding to all of us from the old group. The one time I saw him last year, Meredith monitored his every word and he seemed afraid." "Afraid of what?" I asked, though I feared I already knew the answer. "Of saying the wrong thing. Of not pleasing her." Taylor hesitated. "Look, I don't want to overstep, but this isn't the first time Meredith has cut someone off from their support system. Her previous boyfriend's sister reached out to me after seeing Nathan's engagement announcement online. Apparently the same thing happened. Isolation control, erratic behavior. The relationship ended when Meredith physically attacked the guy's mother at a family gathering." My blood ran cold. "Did they report it?" Taylor shook his head. "They just wanted her gone. The guy moved to another state to get away from her. His sister was trying to warn Nathan, but by then Meredith was already screening all his calls and emails." This revelation was followed by another even more disturbing one. A week later, I received an anonymous call from a woman who identified herself only as a former colleague of Meredith's. "I saw your son's wedding announcement in the company newsletter," she explained. "And then I heard rumors about an incident at their home involving his mother. I felt I had to reach out." The woman went on to describe a pattern of volatile behavior at work. Screaming fits when Meredith was contradicted vindictive actions against colleagues she felt had slighted her manipulation of supervisors through charm and occasional intimidation. She had eventually been asked to leave the company after reducing an intern to tears with a public tirade. "She's not stable," the woman warned, "and she's very, very good at making herself the victim." With each new piece of information, my understanding of the situation shifted. This wasn't just about me. It wasn't even just about Nathan. It was about a pattern of behavior that was unlikely to change without serious intervention. And now there was a baby involved, my grandson who would be born into this volatile environment. The decision I had been avoiding for weeks suddenly became clear. I needed to document what had happened not just for myself, but potentially for Nathan and my grandson as well. I couldn't force Nathan to see the truth about his wife, but I could ensure that when and if he did, there would be evidence to support him. I contacted a family attorney recommended by another member of my support group. Gloria Ramirez specialized in domestic violence cases and had experience with situations involving controlling in-laws. "I understand your reluctance to move forward with charges," Gloria said after listening to my story. "Many victims feel the same way, especially when children are involved. But there are steps we can take to protect you while leaving the door open for reconciliation." She outlined a plan to file a police report to document the assault petition for a restraining order against Meredith, but not Nathan, and draft a letter to Nathan explaining my actions and providing him with resources about controlling relationships. "The restraining order protects you legally if Meredith attempts to contact or harm you again," Gloria explained. "It also creates an official record that may be valuable down the road, especially if custody issues ever arise." The thought of potentially being involved in my grandson's custody case was both terrifying and heartbreaking. But as Gloria pointed out, if Meredith's behavior escalated, as it often did in such cases, having documentation of previous violence could be crucial. With a clarity I hadn't felt since before the assault, I made my decision. I would stand up not just for myself, but for the truth. For the possibility of eventually helping Nathan escape what I now recognized as an abusive relationship. For my future grandson, who deserved a family free from violence and manipulation. This wouldn't be an act of revenge, but of love. Love strong enough to set boundaries to speak truth to protect both myself and eventually perhaps my son and grandson. 3 months after Meredith attacked me, I walked into the police station with Gloria by my side to file a report. The detective who took my statement, a woman named Officer Rodriguez, specialized in domestic violence cases. She listened without judgment as I described what had happened, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "You've waited quite a while to report this," she noted, not accusingly, but matter-of-factly. "Do you still have documentation of your injuries?" I provided the photographs Linda had taken along with my medical records. I also shared the text messages from Nathan, including the devastating "stay away" that had finally pushed me to action. "Unfortunately, this type of family violence is more common than people realize," Officer Rodriguez said, "especially when someone is trying to isolate their partner from family." She explained the process moving forward. The report would be filed, Meredith would likely be interviewed, and the district attorney would decide whether to press charges. Given the time elapsed and the circumstantial nature of the evidence, charges might not be filed, but the report would establish a record of the incident. The next step was applying for a restraining order. Gloria helped me prepare the paperwork carefully, wording it to cover only Meredith, not Nathan, or access to my future grandchild. The temporary order was granted based on the documented injuries and the police report, with a hearing scheduled for 2 weeks later to determine whether it would be extended. With these legal protections in place, I took the hardest step yet, writing to Nathan. For days, I drafted and redrafted the letter, trying to find words that might penetrate the wall Meredith had built around him. Gloria reviewed the final version, ensuring it couldn't be construed as harassment or a violation of the restraining order against Meredith. The letter was simple and direct. I described exactly what had happened during the assault, included copies of my medical records and photographs of my injuries, and expressed my deep love for Nathan despite everything. I also included resources about controlling relationships and contact information for domestic violence support organizations. "I'm not doing this to hurt you or to come between you and Meredith," I wrote. "I'm doing this because I love you and because the truth matters. Whatever you decide, whatever you believe, I am still your mother. That will never change." I sent the letter by certified mail, requiring Nathan's signature for delivery. At least this way I would know he had received it, even if he chose not to respond. While waiting for the restraining order hearing, I received an unexpected call from a woman named Rachel. "You don't know me," she began, "but I'm Meredith's sister." My guard immediately went up. "How did you get my number?" "From your police report. I'm a paralegal, and I have a friend in the records department who alerted me when Meredith's name came up." She paused. "I've been waiting for something like this to happen again." Over the next hour, Rachel painted a disturbing picture of her sister's history. Meredith had exhibited controlling and occasionally violent behavior since childhood. There had been incidents with boyfriends, colleagues, even family members. Their parents had enabled and excused her behavior even when it escalated to physical aggression. "The pattern is always the same," Rachel explained. "She finds someone she can control, isolates them, and then when anyone threatens that control, she lashes out. I tried to warn Nathan before the wedding, but Meredith intercepted my email. She's cut me out of her life entirely now." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Because I'm worried about that baby," Rachel said quietly. "Meredith wasn't kind to our family dog when we were growing up. When she got angry, she would hurt him. I've always worried about what might happen if she had a child." My blood ran cold at the implication. "Have you reported your concerns? To whom there's no crime of might hurt a baby someday. And our parents would never back me up. They're still in denial about who Meredith really is." She sighed heavily. "But I wanted you to know you're not crazy and you're not alone. What Meredith did to you, she's done to others." Rachel agreed to provide a written statement about Meredith's history of violence for the restraining order hearing. Having an actual family member corroborate the pattern of behavior would significantly strengthen my case. As the hearing date approached, I began receiving disturbing messages from mutual acquaintances. Meredith was apparently telling people I had attacked her during her pregnancy, endangering her unborn child, that I was mentally unstable and had been harassing them for months, that Nathan had been forced to cut contact for the safety of his family. The smear campaign was painful, but not surprising. Gloria had warned me this might happen, that abusers often work to control the narrative and discredit their victims. 2 days before the hearing, my phone rang with Nathan's number. I answered with shaking hands, hardly daring to hope. "Mom," his voice sounded tired, strained. "Nathan," I breathed, "I'm so glad you called." There was a long pause. "I got your letter," he finally said, "and the evidence." "I'm sorry it came to this," I told him truthfully, "but I couldn't stay silent any longer." "Did she really? Was it really like you described?" The question broke my heart. He had been there. He had seen me on the floor, injured. "Yes, Nathan. It was exactly like I described. You know me. Have I ever lied to you?" Another long silence. "No," he admitted quietly. "You haven't." "Can we talk? Really talk?" I asked, hope rising cautiously within me. "Not now," he said quickly, and I could hear the fear in his voice. "Meredith will be back soon. I needed to call. Jake showed me the text messages you sent after it happened. Meredith told me you never reached out, that you just filed the police report to hurt us. Nathan, I tried to contact you for days. I sent multiple messages. I called." "I know that now." His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "This isn't the first time she's deleted messages or kept things from me." My heart ached for him. "Nathan, are you safe? Are you okay?" A bitter laugh. "Safe, I don't know what that means anymore, but physically, yes, I'm okay." He paused. "She's never hit me, if that's what you're asking. It's more, I never know what will set her off. What imagined slight will trigger days of silence or screaming." "That's not a healthy relationship, honey." "I know," he said so softly I almost didn't hear it. "But the baby, I can't leave my son." Before I could respond, his tone changed abruptly. "I have to go. She's pulling into the driveway." The call ended, leaving me with a mixture of hope and renewed concern. Nathan had reached out. He had acknowledged at least some of the truth. But he was still trapped, perhaps more than ever, with the baby coming. The restraining order hearing was brief, but intense. Meredith appeared with an expensive attorney and a carefully crafted image of maternal vulnerability, her hand constantly resting on her heavily pregnant belly. She claimed I had been unstable since Nathan's wedding, unable to accept their relationship, and had attacked her during a hormonal outburst when she asked me to respect their boundaries. But the evidence was irrefutable. My medical records clearly documented injuries consistent with being pushed and slapped, not with being the aggressor. The photographs showed bruising that couldn't be explained away. And most damaging to Meredith's case, Rachel's statement provided context for a pattern of similar behavior. The judge granted the restraining order for 1 year. Meredith was prohibited from contacting me coming within 100 yards of me or entering my home or workplace. The order explicitly stated that it did not prevent Nathan from contact or future arrangements regarding grandchild visitation. As we left the courtroom, Meredith's mask of maternal serenity slipped momentarily. She leaned toward me just close enough to whisper, "You'll never see your grandson. Never." Her attorney pulled her back immediately, but the threat lingered in the air between us. I walked out with my head held high, knowing I had stood up for the truth regardless of the consequences. What I didn't anticipate was Meredith's public response. Within days, she had posted a lengthy statement on social media, painting herself as the victim of an unstable mother-in-law who couldn't accept boundaries. She shared carefully curated photos of her and Nathan, looking happy with captions about protecting our growing family from toxic influences. The comments were filled with supportive messages, people condemning me without knowing the facts, offering prayers for their difficult time, and praising Meredith for standing strong. It was a masterclass in manipulation, creating a public narrative that would be difficult to counter without appearing defensive. I didn't respond publicly, as Gloria advised engaging would only feed the drama Meredith was creating. Instead, I focused on healing, both physically and emotionally. I continued therapy with Dr. Reynolds, returned to work, and slowly rebuilt the parts of my life that had been dominated by worry for Nathan. And I waited, for what I wasn't entirely sure: a sign, a change, an opportunity to help my son when he was ready to be helped. It came sooner than I expected in the form of another call from Nathan. "She kept your letter from me," he said without preamble. "Jake had to show me everything. Your texts, your calls, your letter. She deleted them all." "I thought that might be the case," I replied carefully. "Mom, I saw her push you that day in the kitchen. I saw it, and I still chose to believe her when she said you attacked her first." His voice broke. "What kind of son does that make me?" "One who's been manipulated by someone very skilled at it," I said gently. "This isn't your fault, Nathan. But I let it happen. I've let a lot of things happen." He took a deep, shuddering breath. "I don't know what to do. The baby's coming in a few weeks. I can't just leave." "You don't have to make any decisions right now," I assured him. "But know that whatever you decide, I'm here for you and for my grandson." "She'll never let you see him," Nathan said, echoing Meredith's threat from the courtroom. "She's already said as much." "One step at a time." I counseled, though inside I was aching at the thought of being kept from my grandchild. Right now, I'm just glad we're talking again. Over the following weeks, Nathan called when he could, usually during his lunch break at work when Meredith couldn't monitor him. The picture he painted of their home life was increasingly disturbing. Explosive arguments, threats of suicide if he left her, destruction of his personal belongings during her rages. Classic patterns of emotional abuse that had escalated during the pregnancy. I listened, offered support, and gently suggested resources, all while knowing that the decision to leave had to be his. Pressing too hard would only drive him away again, back into the isolation Meredith had created. Then late one night, my phone rang with Nathan's number. "Jacob was born yesterday," he said, his voice a mixture of joy and fear. 7 pounds, 2 ounces. He's perfect, Mom." Tears filled my eyes. My grandson had arrived, and I hadn't been there to welcome him. "Congratulations, Nathan. I'm so happy for you." "I want you to meet him," he said suddenly. "Not at the hospital. Meredith would never allow it. But maybe I could bring him to see you when she's asleep, just for a little while." The suggestion was both touching and alarming. "Nathan, I don't want you to do anything that might put you or Jacob at risk. The restraining order prevents Meredith from coming near me, but it doesn't give me permission to see Jacob without her consent." "I know," he said, "but he's my son too, and you're his grandmother. She can't just erase that." 3 days later, Nathan arrived at my door at 11 p.m., cradling a tiny bundle in his arms. "She takes sleeping pills since the delivery," he explained. "She'll be out until morning." I invited him, in my heart pounding with equal measures of joy and anxiety. And then Nathan placed my grandson in my arms, and everything else faded away. Jacob was indeed perfect. A tiny replica of Nathan as a baby, with the same serious expression, the same wisp of dark hair. I traced his miniature features with a gentle finger, marveling at this new life, this continuation of our family. "He has your mother's eyes," I told Nathan, who smiled genuinely for the first time in months. "I thought so too." As Jacob slept peacefully in my arms, Nathan and I talked more openly than we had in years. He confessed his growing fear of Meredith's volatile behavior, especially now that Jacob had arrived. He described incidents during her pregnancy that had frightened him, rages where she threw things, threats of self-harm, moments when she seemed to become someone else entirely. "I keep thinking it will get better," he said. that once her hormones settle after the birth, she'll be the woman I fell in love with again, but I'm not sure that woman ever really existed. I listened without judgment, offering support, but not direction. When it was time for him to leave, I reluctantly handed Jacob back, pressing a gentle kiss to his forehead. "I love you both," I told Nathan. "Whatever happens, remember that." These clandestine visits continued over the following weeks, Nathan bringing Jacob to see me when Meredith was asleep or out with friends. It was a precarious arrangement, one that filled me with both joy and dread. Joy at developing a relationship with my grandson, dread at what might happen if Meredith discovered Nathan's deception. The situation reached its breaking point when Jacob was 2 months old. Nathan called me in a panic from his office. "Meredith just had some kind of breakdown," he said, his voice tight with fear. She was screaming at Jacob for crying, saying he was doing it on purpose to torture her. When I tried to take him from her, she threw a glass vase across the room. It shattered right next to his bassinet. My nurse's training kicked in immediately. "Is Jacob safe right now?" "Yes, I took him with me to the office. Told my boss it was a childcare emergency, which isn't exactly a lie." He took a shaky breath. "Mom, I can't take him home. Not tonight. Not after what I saw." "Bring him here," I said without hesitation. "Both of you." 2 hours later, Nathan arrived with Jacob and a hastily packed diaper bag. The baby was fussy and overtired, and Nathan looked like he was on the verge of collapse. I took Jacob, soothing him with the rocking motion that had always calmed Nathan as a baby, while my son sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. "I don't know what to do," he whispered. "I'm so afraid for him, for both of us." I had been preparing for this moment, consulting with Gloria and domestic violence experts about how to safely help someone leave a controlling relationship. I had resources-ready contact information for specialized counselors, even a safety plan outlined. "You don't have to go back," I told him. "Not tonight, not ever if that's your decision. There are people who can help you navigate this safely." Nathan looked up, his expression a mix of fear and hope. "What about Jacob? She's his mother." "Yes, and she always will be. But right now, your priority has to be his safety and yours. There are legal ways to address custody that don't involve returning to a dangerous situation." That night, with Jacob sleeping peacefully in the portable crib I had purchased weeks earlier, just in case Nathan and I talked through his options. He could file for emergency custody based on Meredith's behavior. He could seek a separation that included a temporary custody arrangement. He could document incidents of concerning behavior toward Jacob for future reference. By morning, Nathan had made his decision. He wouldn't return to the house he shared with Meredith. He would stay with me temporarily while filing for legal separation and emergency custody of Jacob. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal procedures, emotional outbursts from Meredith, and the delicate process of establishing a new normal for our unconventional household. Meredith was served with divorce papers and a temporary custody order that granted Nathan primary custody of Jacob with supervised visitation for Meredith. Her reaction was as volatile as we had feared. She showed up at my house screaming threats and pounding on the door until police arrived to enforce the restraining order. She created multiple social media accounts to harass both Nathan and me when her primary accounts were blocked. She contacted Nathan's employer, making false claims about his mental health and fitness to work. But we weathered the storm together, Nathan, Jacob, and I. We established boundaries, followed legal advice, and most importantly, provided Jacob with a safe, loving environment amid the chaos his mother was creating. After 3 months, Nathan found an apartment near mine, close enough for support, but separate enough to establish his independence. The divorce proceedings continued, complicated by Meredith's refusal to cooperate and frequent firing of her attorneys when they gave advice she didn't want to hear. 1 year after the assault that had initially separated us, I found myself in a place I never could have imagined. My relationship with Nathan had been rebuilt on a foundation of truth and mutual respect rather than the unquestioning devotion of before. My bond with Jacob grew stronger each day as I helped Nathan navigate the challenges of single fatherhood. Meredith remained a volatile presence in our lives, though a more distant one. The courts had ordered her to undergo psychological evaluation and therapy as a condition of unsupervised visitation with Jacob. She complied outwardly while continuing to blame everyone else for her circumstances. I harbored no illusions that she would ever acknowledge the truth of what had happened between us, but I no longer needed that acknowledgement to move forward. The truth had revealed itself in other ways. Through Nathan's growing awareness, through the support of unexpected allies like Rachel, through the legal system that had provided protection when I needed it most. Life has a way of coming full circle if you give it enough time. 2 years after Meredith attacked me in her kitchen, I stood in my own kitchen teaching Jacob how to make his father's favorite cookies. At 3 years old, my grandson was a bundle of energy and curiosity, his small hands covered in flour as he enthusiastically helped mix the dough. "More chocolate chips, Grandma," he insisted, his grin revealing tiny teeth that had arrived one by one over the months I had been privileged to witness. "You think so? Let's ask your dad." I looked over at Nathan, who was setting the table for our weekly Sunday dinner, a tradition we had reinstated now with a booster seat for the newest generation. Nathan laughed. "The correct answer is always more chocolate chips." As I watched them together, I felt a profound sense of gratitude mixed with lingering sadness. Grateful that Nathan had found the courage to leave a toxic situation. Sad that Jacob's relationship with his mother remained complicated and at times strained. Meredith had eventually completed the court-mandated therapy and parenting classes, earning the right to unsupervised visitation with Jacob every other weekend. These transitions were still tense with Meredith, often using them as opportunities to criticize Nathan's parenting or make subtle digs about my influence on Jacob. But Nathan had developed remarkable resilience. The insecure, fearful man who had stood silent while his mother was assaulted had been replaced by a confident father who set clear boundaries and prioritized his son's well-being above all else. "She tried to convince me to let her take Jacob to her parents for a week," he told me one evening after Jacob was in bed. When I reminded her that our custody agreement only allows overnight visits, not extended stays, she accused me of being controlling. Ironic, right? I nodded, careful not to criticize Meredith directly. We had learned that maintaining a neutral stance toward her in conversations was healthiest for everyone, especially as Jacob grew old enough to understand more of what was said around him. "You handled it well," I said simply, and Nathan smiled. "I had a good teacher. You never badmouthed Dad after he died, even when you had every right to be angry that he left us with so little security." His observation touched me deeply. I had tried so hard to give Nathan a healthy perspective on his father to honor Richard's memory while acknowledging the challenges his death had created. It was gratifying to know that effort had been recognized and was now informing Nathan's approach to co-parenting with Meredith. My own journey over these 2 years had been transformative as well. The assault and its aftermath had forced me to re-examine my identity beyond motherhood, to develop stronger boundaries, and to recognize the difference between loving support and enabling dependence. I had become an advocate in ways I never expected, volunteering with a local domestic violence organization that supported people leaving controlling relationships. I shared my story carefully, respecting Nathan's privacy, while helping others understand the complex dynamics of family estrangement and reconciliation. Perhaps most surprisingly, I had developed a cautious working relationship with Rachel, Meredith's sister. Her concern for Jacob's well-being had proved genuine, and she had become an unexpected ally in navigating the more difficult aspects of co-parenting with someone like Meredith. "You know what the greatest irony is?" Rachel said during one of our occasional coffee meetings. "Meredith was so determined to keep you away from Nathan and Jacob, and her actions ended up bringing you closer together than ever." It was true, though I took no pleasure in how that closeness had come about. I would have preferred 1,000 times over for Nathan to have a healthy, loving marriage and for Jacob to have 2 parents living harmoniously together. But given the reality we faced, I was profoundly grateful for the strong, honest relationship we had forged through adversity. As I reflect on our journey, I'm struck by how differently things might have turned out had I not made the difficult decision to document the assault and seek legal protection. Had I remained silent out of fear or misplaced loyalty, Nathan might still be trapped in a controlling relationship, and Jacob might be growing up in a volatile, unsafe environment. Instead, my grandson is thriving in a home filled with love and stability. My son has reclaimed his confidence and independence, and I have discovered strength I never knew I possessed. The bruises Meredith left on my body healed long ago. The pain of Nathan's temporary betrayal has faded with his sincere remorse and our rebuilt relationship. What remains is a family transformed, not broken as I once feared, but reconfigured into something different, yet equally valuable. If you're facing a similar situation, family estrangement, domestic violence, difficult choices about standing up for yourself or protecting loved ones, know that there is hope beyond the pain. Documentation matters, truth matters, boundaries matter, and healing, while rarely linear, is possible. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to protect yourself or someone you love? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Please like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and healing, and share with someone who might need to know they're not alone in their struggles. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the most necessary healing.